So Listido, how does a team hold the ball for like 60% of a match, complete nearly double the passes of their opponent, and still walk away feeling like they just lost a tactical war?
Yeah, it really does feel like a glitch in the matrix.
Right, it's wild. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are answering that exact question. We're cutting through the absolute noise of just an action-packed Sunday at the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
Oh, there was so much to sift through.
There really was. So we're taking this massive stack of tactical breakdowns, match reports, and live updates, and we are translating them into the actual, like, underlying mechanisms deciding these matches. We aren't just looking at the scorelines today.
No, because the scoreline almost never tells the whole story.
Exactly. We're looking at how structural pressure on the pitch and psychological pressure on the leaderboard completely dictates the modern game.
It's basically the invisible force behind every pass. You know, like you can look at a heat map or a possession stat all day, but unless you understand the spatial and honestly the psychological friction happening between the 22 players,
you're missing half the picture.
Exactly. Just half the picture.
And whether you're, a diehard football tactician or you're just catching up on the world's biggest tournament because it's suddenly taking over all your social feeds, this deep dive is going to give you those underlying moments.
So you can actually sound like an expert at the water cooler tomorrow.
Exactly. And hey, just a quick heads up to follow along with real-time updates and jump into the discussions as we unpack these tactical shifts. You should definitely check out vailychat.web.app. It's the perfect second screen companion for today's matches.
Oh, for sure. The live reactions on there are great.
So let's start with the shockwaves that were just sent through Group F in Arlington, Texas. The Netherlands and Japan just battled to a 2-2 draw. And looking at the stat sheet, it feels like a mathematical error.
It really does.
The Dutch held exactly 60% possession overall, and it peaked at like 69% in the first half. They completed 464 passes to Japan's 287. I have to ask, isn't holding the ball for 2/3 of a half the ultimate indicator of dominance? Like, how does a team not put the game to bed with that much control?
Well, see, you'd naturally assume that volume equals dominance, right? But in modern international football, raw possession numbers can be incredibly deceptive. Often a team isn't actually forcing possession.
Wait, what do you mean they aren't forcing it?
Yeah, the other team is willingly gifting it to them in harmless areas. Japan's coach, Hajime Moriyasu, he utilized this highly disciplined block and break strategy.
Okay, let's unpack that, because looking at those first half possession numbers for the Dutch, I can't help but think of it like empty calories.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right, like they were chewing on the ball constantly, just moving it around, but they absolutely struggled to actually nourish the scoreline. It was all volume, no substance. Why do elite teams with all the attacking talent in the world fall into that trap of possession without penetration?
It really comes down to the opposing team's defensive structure and, how they manipulate space. So the Netherlands lined up in a 4-2-3-1 formation under Ronald Koeman, and that system relies heavily on a double pivot in the midfield.
Okay, for those of us who don't spend our weekends drawing on tactical whiteboards, what exactly is the mechanical function of a double pivot?
Right, so imagine two central defensive midfielders positioned right in front of the defensive backline. They act like a hinge for the entire team.
A hinge, okay.
Their job is to dictate the tempo, sweep up danger, and constantly recycle the ball side to side. They're basically waiting for the opponent's defensive block to shift out of place and leave a gap.
But Japan answered this by setting up in a very compact 3-4-2-1 formation.
Precisely.
So they matched them with numbers in the midfield, but fundamentally changed the defensive shape behind it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Japan deployed three center backs, incredibly comfortable defending the width of the penalty area. So when the Dutch fullbacks, like Denzel Dumfries, pushed high up the pitch to join the attack,
which he does a lot,
all the time, Japan didn't panic. And they didn't overcommit, they just absorbed the pressure. Instead of pressing the Dutch midfielders and risking, leaving a gap behind them, Japan formed a low block.
Which is essentially parking two tight, horizontal lines of players deep in their own half.
Exactly.
See, I want to push back on that a bit, because if you park a bus in your own half, you're inviting the opponent into your danger zone. The reports show the Dutch had 55 final third entries in that first half compared to Japan's 19.
Yeah, the disparity was massive.
Right. So if you let a team into your final third 55 times, mathematically, shouldn't they punish you eventually?
Well, they should, if those entries lead to high-quality shots. But because Japan's lines were so tightly packed, those 55 entries resulted in almost entirely lateral sideways passes.
Just passing around the perimeter.
Exactly. The Dutch couldn't find the vertical killer ball through the center because there was physically no space for the ball to travel through. It's the literal definition of your empty calories analogy.
Right.
You feel full because you're camped out in their third of the pitch, but you're taking low percentage shots from inside the box, or you're swinging in crosses that are easily cleared by three towering center backs.
And when the Dutch did manage to find a sliver of space and fire a shot, they ran into Japan's first half MVP, goalkeeper Zion Suzuki. Let's talk about his role, because playing behind a low block seems like it would require a very specific mentality from a goalkeeper.
Oh, it requires absolute flawless concentration. Because when your team plays a block and break style, you know the opponent's going to get shots off eventually.
Right, you can't block everything.
No, you can't. You are the ultimate safety net. And Suzuki, he made 3 crucial saves to keep the game 0-0 at halftime, and the analytics actually show he prevented .74 expected goals in that first half alone.
Expected goals, or XG, is a term that gets thrown around a lot. Mechanically speaking, what does .74 expected goals actually tell us about the saves he was making?
So expected goals measures the quality of a scoring chance. It looks at the location of the shot, the angle, pass that led to it, the number of defenders in the way.
Basically all the context.
Yeah, all of it. And it calculates the mathematical probability of that specific shot going in. So .74 expected goals means that based on historical data of thousands of similar shots, the average team would have scored nearly a full goal from the chances the Dutch created.
Wow, so Suzuki's positioning and reflexes mathematically erased a goal from the board.
He was the literal difference between Japan executing their game plan and Japan having to abandon it to chase the game early on.
But both of these teams were trying to execute these game plans while missing their machinery. I mean, the Netherlands were without Xavi Simons and Jurin Timber. Japan was missing Kaori Mitoma, who suffered that severe hamstring tear, and Wataru Endo.
Yeah, huge losses for both sides.
How do these specific absences alter the literal geometry of the pitch?
Well, it completely changes how both teams attack. Without Xavi Simons, the Dutch lose a critical skeleton key.
A skeleton key?
Yeah, because Simons is brilliant at operating in tight spaces between the opponent's midfield and defensive line. Without his, unpredictable creative spark, the Dutch possession became much more rigid and predictable.
Just passing in a U shape.
Exactly. And for Japan, missing Mitoma has to be devastating for a counterattacking side.
Oh, it's a massive blow. I like to think of Japan's system not as a parked bus, but as a coiled spring. The more the Dutch pushed down on them with possession, the more kinetic energy Japan stored up for the counterattack.
I love that analogy.
And Mitoma is usually the release valve for that spring. He is lightning fast down the wing. So without him, Moriyasu had to rely more on players like Takefusa Kubo to drift into what we call the half spaces.
Right, the vertical corridors between the center of the pitch and the sideline.
Yes, Kubo had to drop into those pockets, receive the ball under pressure, and launch the breaks from deeper, more central areas. It meant Japan had to be even more precise with the very limited possession they actually had.
Well, the spring finally released, but not before the Dutch broke the stalemate. And I don't want to just read a list of who scored when, because the how is so much more fascinating here.
Absolutely.
In the 51st minute, Virgil van Dijk finally gets the on the board. And ironically, despite all that open play possession we just talked about, it comes from a dead ball situation.
Which is textbook. When you cannot break down a low block through passing geometry, you have to bypass it altogether. You rely on set pieces.
Right.
So Ryan Gravenberch whoops in a cross, and Van Dijk simply uses his physical dominance to overpower the zonal marking in the center of the box. He just buries a header in the bottom right corner.
It's a brute force solution to a complex spatial problem.
Exactly, and you would think a goal like that forces Japan to open up, break their structure, and suddenly get picked apart by the Dutch counter. But just 6 minutes later, in the 57th minute, Kaito Nakamura answers for the Samurai Blue.
This just highlights the incredible tactical discipline of this Japanese squad. They didn't panic and abandon their defensive shape. They just waited for the spring to compress again.
Because the Dutch got comfortable?
Yeah, the Dutch pushed their defensive line high up the pitch, feeling confident. Kubo finds a pocket of space, sets up Nakamura, and he just unleashes this brilliant left-footed strike from outside the box. It completely exposed the vulnerability of a high defensive line against a precise transition.
But the pendulum swings right back. 64th minute, Crescencio Somerville, who is walking a time rope after picking up a yellow card, curls a beautiful shot to restore the Dutch lead. If Van Dijk's goal was brute force, what was this?
This was individual brilliance breaking a system. When passing fails and brute force isn't an option, you need a player who can simply dribble past the defender, collapse the defensive shape, and create a shooting angle out of nothing.
And Somerville did exactly that.
Gravenberch gets another assist, but it was really Somerville's ability to operate in chaos that restore the lead.
Which brings us to the 88th minute. The Netherlands are trying to bleed the clock. They pull off attackers. They bring on Nathan Ake to shore up the back line.
Basically trying to play Japan's game and absorb pressure.
Right, and it backfires spectacularly. Substitute Koki Ogawa gets his head on a late corner kick. It deflects off Daichi Kamada into the top right corner, 2-2.
It is the ultimate lesson in the psychology of defending a lead. When you sub off your attacking threats to protect a one-goal lead, you're no longer making the opponent worry about what's behind them.
You're just inviting them in.
You invite a desperate team to throw all their numbers forward. And when you invite that much pressure into your penalty box in the dying minutes, chaotic things happen. A deflection off a corner is just the physical manifestation of that chaos.
It's a heartbreaking points for the Netherlands, but a massive result for Japan. And speaking of massive results, we really have to transition from the tactical pressure of Group F to the intense psychological pressure cooking in Group E.
Oh, Group E is a mess right now.
It is. Japan absorbed pressure on the field today, but Ivory Coast and Ecuador are about to step onto the pitch in Philadelphia, having to absorb an immense amount of pressure on the leaderboard.
Because of the ghost of the match that just happened before theirs?
Yes. Germany's absolute 7-1 demolition of World Cup debutants Curacao.
Just a total bloodbath?
It is impossible to overstate how a blowout of that magnitude warps the reality of a group stage. Goal difference is the primary tiebreaker. Germany basically just spotted themselves a +6 goal difference right out of the gate.
It changes everything.
So put yourself in the shoes of the managers for Ivory Coast and Ecuador. It feels like a high-stakes poker game where the most intimidating stack at the table just went all in on the first hand and won massive. How do you prevent your players from looking at the scoreboard and panicking?
That's the challenge.
Like, how do you stop them from stepping onto the pitch trying to force the 5-0 win themselves just to keep pace?
It is honestly one of the hardest psychological jobs a manager has in tournament football. If you go out there trying to chase a 6-goal deficit against a highly organized physical team like Ecuador or a deeply talented squad like Ivory Coast, you're going to leave yourself structurally exposed.
You'll be way too aggressive.
Yeah, you'll get countered and you will likely lose the match. A seasoned manager has to build a mental firewall. You have to convince your players that the mathematics of the group are entirely irrelevant until match day 3.
So you genuinely have to trick them into having tunnel vision.
You compartmentalize. You tell them, we do not care what Germany did. Our tournament starts right now, and the only currency that matters today is 3 points.
Which is easier said than done.
Oh, definitely. But Cote d'Ivoire's coach, Amars Faye, is projecting exactly that kind of stoic calm to the media. He stated very plainly that the elephants will have the answers for Ecuador.
Talk is cheap, though, you know? Having the answer sounds great in a press conference, but what does that practically look like on the grass when you are staring down a physical Ecuadorian squad?
A whole different ballgame.
Because both of these teams know that dropping points today means you are suddenly staring down the barrel of having to play a rampant German side just to survive.
Practically, it looks like a brutal battle of attrition in the center of the pitch. Ecuador is incredibly robust. They'll try to physically disrupt Ivory Coast's rhythm.
Right.
Ivory Coast has the flair and the talent, but they cannot afford to be defensively naive. The tactical trap here is the fear of losing.
Interesting.
Neither team can afford to sit back and settle for a 0-0 draw, because a single point leaves them both trailing far behind Germany's pace. But if they overcommit, they risk walking away with nothing.
It is going to be a fascinating tightrope walk. And just as a quick reminder, if you want to see how the global fan base is reacting to that 7-1 Germany shocker and how they are predicting the tactical fallout for Ivory Coast and Ecuador, jump over to vailychat.web.app.
Yeah, the debates happening over there right now about group stage game theory are incredible.
It really highlights how interconnected the tournament is, doesn't it? A result in one stadium completely rewrites the emotional and tactical scripts for a match happening halfway across the continent.
It's the butterfly effect in football.
Exactly. Which brings us perfectly to our final match preview. Let's follow that ripple effect back to Group F, because Japan and the Netherlands just took points off each other with that 2-2 draw. The door hasn't just opened for Sweden and Tunisia down in Monterrey, Mexico.
It's been completely blown off the hinges.
Right. The math for this match has entirely changed.
Completely.
How does watching the group favorites draw completely change the tactical whiteboard for Sweden's manager tonight? Because, I mean, before today, both Sweden and Tunisia might have quietly viewed a draw as a very acceptable, safe result, assuming the Netherlands were going to just run away with the group points anyway.
Well, the risk-reward calculation flips on its head. A draw is no longer a safe play, it's a missed opportunity.
Because first place is right there.
Exactly. Because right now, a win for either side guarantees they finish match day 1 sitting in first place in Group F. That is an enormous carrot dangling in front of them. For a team like Sweden, who the sources specifically note are fully fit and out to prove they merit their World Cup place, That is all the incentive they need to abandon a conservative opening match strategy.
They have a massive chip on their shoulder.
They do. And a motivated, fully fit Swedish squad is a dangerous proposition. Historically, they're exceptionally organized, very difficult to break down centrally, and absolutely lethal on set pieces.
Yeah, they're big.
Very big. If their manager senses that the group is wide open, they might deploy a much more aggressive pressing trigger than we're used to seeing. They might try to suffocate Tunisia early and seize control of the narrative.
But Tunisia is not going to just roll over. We literally just spent the first act of this deep dive breaking down how an organized, disciplined team can frustrate a favorite and strike with precision.
Yeah, and Tunisia is exceptionally well drilled defensively.
So is it possible they look at what Japan just did to the Netherlands, absorb Sweden's aggression, and look to steal the game with their own, quote, spring on the counter?
It's highly likely. Resilience is really becoming the defining theme of the early days of this tournament. Teams that keep their structural shape and do not panic without the ball are getting massive results.
Right.
Tunisia will be acutely aware of that. Sweden has the pressure of expectation to prove they belong, but Tunisia has the quiet opportunity to play spoiler and take control of the group.
It is a brilliant clash of mentalities brewing down in Monterrey. We have covered incredible ground today, from the complex possession traps in Texas, to the psychological warfare of goal differentials in Philadelphia, to the shifting tactical whiteboards in Mexico. But before we wrap up, let's zoom out and look at the actual architecture of the tournament itself.
Oh, this is important.
Because it might be influencing literally everything we just talked about.
It is crucial context. We are operating under the newly expanded 4018 World Cup format.
Right, which is huge.
This is a massive shift from previous tournaments. In this new system, it isn't just the top 2 teams in each group that advance. The 8 best third-place teams out of the 12 groups will also secure a ticket to the knockout rounds.
Wait, so they've essentially built a massive safety net underneath the group stages.
Exactly. And the provocative question I think we need to be asking ourselves, and something I really want everyone listening to chew on as these games progress, is this. Does this new safety net actually incentivize safer, more conservative football?
Wait, how would it make it more conservative?
Well, think about the game theory here. If you're a team like Japan or the Netherlands coming off a hard-fought draw today, you know that historically a draw isn't great.
Right, you usually want the win.
But under this new format, you know that just one win in your remaining 2 games will give you 4 points total. 4 points is almost mathematically guaranteed to secure you one of those 8 third-place spots and keep you alive in the tournament.
Wow, so suddenly a draw becomes incredibly valuable, and risking a loss by pushing for a late win becomes a terrifying, unnecessary gamble.
Precisely.
If 3 or 4 points total might be enough to scrape through, a manager might tell his team to just park the bus for the last 20 minutes of every match.
Exactly. It forces players and managers who constantly calculate the math across 12 different groups in real time. Does the expanded format, designed to bring more excitement and more teams, ironically cause the football itself to become more defensive and risk-averse?
Man, it completely reframes how we view a team settling for a draw. It isn't just playing it safe, it's playing the expanded format.
Yep.
That is an incredible point to keep an eye on as we move into match day 2 and 3 of the group stages. Well, that wraps up today's deep dive into the tactical and psychological chessboard of the World Cup. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss our breakdowns, and share this deep dive with the biggest football fan you know, especially if they need a gentle reminder that 60% possession doesn't guarantee a thing if it's just empty calories.
So true.
And to keep following the tactical shifts and fan reactions live, head over to vailychat.wib.app. Above all, keep questioning the numbers and stay insanely curious. Catch you next time.
¿Qué tal? Soy Ali y vamos a arrancar de inmediato con este análisis de la jornada del Mundial. Hay muchísima información que procesar hoy, así que vamos directo al grano. Empezamos con el grupo E y un duelo que en el papel era de extremos absolutos. Tenemos a los 4 veces campeones del mundo, Alemania, enfrentándose a Curazao, que literalmente es la nación más pequeña en clasificar en toda la historia de la competición. Y vaya que se notó la diferencia en la cancha. 7-1 a favor de los alemanes, un marcador de verdadera locura. El gol tempranero de Félix Nemecha y un doblete espectacular de Kai Havertz desarmaron por completo ese bloque defensivo de 4-2-3-1 que había planteado Curazao y que la verdad no aguantó la presión. Pero ojo, hay que detenernos un segundo para celebrar un momento verdaderamente histórico. El primer gol en un mundial para Curazao. Un disparo del Líbano Comenencia en la primera mitad que se desvió y terminó en la red, dándoles el empate momentáneo. Sin duda, un logro gigante para el equipo dirigido por el veterano Dick Advocat, a sus 78 años de edad. Pasando al grupo F, nos espera un choque que promete sacar chispas. Países Bajos, con una plantilla llena de estrellas, se va a medir contra un Japón que viene encendidísimo, arrastrando una impresionante racha de 6 victorias consecutivas. Es un duelo de tácticas que nadie se puede perder. Hablando de los neerlandeses, tenemos actualizaciones importantísimas sobre la alineación. La buena noticia es que el portero Bart Verbruggen está listo para regresar al arco titular. Sin embargo, Memphis Depay va a arrancar en la banca por esa recuperación del muslo, funcionando más como un súper revulsivo. Además, Justin Kluivert tendrá minutos delimitados y Xavi Simons está 100% descartado. Pero la jornada de hoy no termina ahí. Para la cartelera nocturna, a las 7 de la noche, tenemos un partidazo del grupo E entre Costa de Marfil y Ecuador, jugando en Filadelfia. Y más tarde, a las 10, Suecia se enfrenta a Túnez allá en Monterrey por el grupo F. Son dos encuentros clave que van a definir muchísimo de cara a la siguiente fase. Para ver el calendario completo, seguir los resultados y checar análisis tácticos en vivo, visiten vailychat.web.app. Léelo, míralo, compártelo. Soy Ali y los dejo con esta pregunta antes del pitazo inicial. Después de esta demostración de poder absoluto, ¿habrá algún equipo en todo este torneo capaz de frenar el ataque implacable de Alemania? A disfrutar de los partidos. Bienvenidos. Welcome to the chaos of the 2026 World Cup opening weekend. Within a single 48-hour window, the tournament has swung from a 7-goal demolition to a historic underdog milestone, and now toward a looming upset. We are seeing two completely different tournaments happen on the same pitch. On one side, Germany is executing a ruthless tactical masterclass. On the other, the island of Curaçao has forced the world to stop and acknowledge a historic achievement, and the volatility is just starting. In Group F, an injury-depleted Netherlands squad is about to face a Japan team that hasn't lost a match in months. These unpredictable results are the direct consequence of the 2026 format changes. To see the full breakdown of how expansion is reshaping the game, head to vailychat.webapp. The World Cup changed the moment the field grew from 32 to 48 teams. These 16 new slots were primarily filled by nations historically watching from the sidelines. Critics argued inviting smaller squads would destroy competitive balance, turning group stages into lopsided mismatches. The opening match of Group E was the ultimate test for those fears. It featured Germany, a team with 4 stars on their chest, against Curaçao, a nation making its first ever World Cup appearance. The final 7-1 scoreline provides the first real data on how the 48-team bracket functions. It shows that a single match can now serve 2 different purposes: a total restoration of confidence for a giant and historic arrival for a debutante. Germany arrived in North America with a reputation to rebuild. After failing to make it out of the group stages in both 2018 and 2022, the squad was playing for more than just 3 points. They were playing to prove they still belonged among the elite. Manager Julian Nagelsmann didn't approach the opener with caution. He viewed the expanded field as an opportunity to exercise past failures, instructing his players to maintain a high-pressing, ruthless attack for the full 90 minutes. That aggression worked. Kai Havertz led the offense with clinical composure, scoring twice, while Nagelsmann successfully integrated new talent like Nathaniel Brown, who secured his first international goal as the tally climbed to 5. For Germany, the 48-team stage served as a necessary tactical laboratory, allowing them to execute a confidence-building demolition on an overmatched opponent. While the 7-1 result dominated the headlines, the most significant moment of the match happened in the 6th minute. After falling behind early, Curaçao responded immediately. Livano Comenencia forced a deflected equalizer into the net, and for a short window of time, the game was tied at 1-1. To understand the weight of that goal, you have to look at the rankings. Curaçao entered the tournament 82nd in the world, having never played on a stage of this magnitude before. In this expanded format, the definition of success shifts. For a nation of this size, scoring against a 4-time is a victory that will live in their record books long after the final score is forgotten.